5 years ago, I was sexually assaulted on the streets of Melbourne. It was 9 p.m. It was outside the Queen Street Bridge, just near the casino. Now, it wasn't traumatic. I have no scars. I don't have any PTSD. Like, for me, I didn't even realize this was happening. This story is so complicated, and I've made brief TikToks and brief Instagram reels about it. But recently, I had a very famous documentarian, David Farrier, who was the creator and star of Dark Tourist on Netflix. He shot me a message and he said, Christian, I am doing a little bit of a deep dive into the fake seizure guy who runs around faking seizures and you sit on him. And he was like, I heard you've had an encounter with him. And I was like, yes, I have. And I did an interview with David the other day, and he recently published an article, and I was just shocked by all the information about this guy. Let me share with you what happened on the night in question with me. So I only had a few weeks before I was moving interstate, so my head was a bit scattered, and I had been invited to attend this installation art experience. It's called Flight. It's a shipping container that was placed in Queen Street Mall, and you go inside and it goes pitch black and it simulates a commercial airliner crashing. It's horrific, right? I don't know why I wanted to do it, but I went and I did it. At the end of the experience, I was in tears. I was just wowed by how crazy it was. I was talking with the organisers, and during that conversation, I noticed a smaller, a thin-framed young guy appear in my periphery, and I look over, and it was clear that he needed some help. He looked really worried, and he was like, I'm going to have a seizure. He started sort of shaking, and I freaked out. I mean, I've got no medical training whatsoever, and I was like, oh shit, okay, what do you need me to do? Now, I was there at the time with 3 other people, 2 of the organisers and my videographer, Ben. And we all sort of were like, oh, what do you need us to do? And he said, I need to lie down. And so I was like, cool. I was ready to put him in the recovery position on the side, because that's just what I assumed you would do. And I was going to take my jacket off and use it to put under his head. He said no. He said, no, I need to lie face down on the ground. Now, I am very trusting and naive. And I just thought, you know what? He knows what medical episode he's about to have. I'm just going to trust him. Ben, on the other hand, immediately was like, this is weird, absolutely not, no. And Ben sort of refused to lie him on his stomach at that point, to which I was horrified. I was like, oh my God, you're refusing to help this guy? Ben's got experience in the profession, right? And he was like, no, this is not what you do. We need to put him on his side. And I was like, Ben, he needs to lie face down because that's what he said works best for him. The guy lies face down, and he says, I need you to hold my hands. So I reach out and hold his hands sort of next to him. And he says, I need you to pin them behind my back. Now, this is all happening relatively quickly. It's just sort of one instruction after the other. And I'm like, I am here to help. I pin his hands behind his back, and he's sort of shaking. Ben says, well, we should call an ambulance. The guy says, no, it'll be okay. This will, be over in however long. And then... This is insane. Then he says, I need you to sit on me. Now, I am 115 kilos at this point, and he is tiny. The breeze would blow him away. I reckon he was probably in his late 20s, early 30s. And so I sat on him. I just sat on him like he was a bus stop, just waiting for a bus. And I remember going, this is so weird, but okay, I guess that's to stop him from thrashing around and hurting himself. He then says, I'll need you to straddle me. To which Ben says, I don't think people having a seizure are this coherent and are able to talk to you. And I'm like, Ben, this man needs our help, and I am here to help. So Ben comes down to help the situation, and this guy was like, no, I just want one of you. And I was like, just look, I'm already sitting on him, I'll do it. And he said, straddle me. He was like, straddle me. Don't sit on me like I'm a bus stop, straddle me. And so I'm sitting there, holding his hands behind his back, riding him like a horse. That's what it looked like, because he's like gyrating, and I'm pinning his arms down. Now, his arms were very close to my crutch, and on the odd occasion, they would touch me, to which I was horrified, because I was like, oh my God, I don't mean for this to be happening. I thought this poor guy, here he is, and then here I am just shoving his hands in my crotch. And I'm like, I'm trying not to do that. So I'm trying to gently push his hands away, pin him down, sit on him. In my mind, I'm sort of like, hey, this is a little odd. And then he asks, I'm pretty confident he asks this, but I have read that this is what he asks people, so I don't know if I'm muddling the two, but I do remember he wanted me to hold his head down, and I did refuse to because it was on the concrete, and then it was quickly like, I need you to hold my head down. Then it was like, I said, oh, no, that's weird. Ben started being like, this is weird. And then he said, I've escaped from prison. Just really quickly, hold my head down. I've escaped from prison. Just so nonchalantly. Then immediately the organisers that I was with started to call the police because he had just said he'd escaped from prison. And I was like, what fucking prison? How? I was like, oh, he's on drugs. He's on the drugs. He's on a drug trip. And then I thought maybe he has a knife. I don't know. I'm holding his hands. I'm sitting on him. And I did have a panic that he would reach into his pocket and pull out a knife and just stab me. That's what I thought was going to happen. So I was holding him and I thought, fuck, I'm going to have to get off of him. And I'm going to have to do it really quickly. I don't like this situation that I'm in. And I was like, Ben, you're going to have to help me up here. And it was like 3, 2, 1, off I get. And as soon as I jumped off of him and he could hear that we were talking to the police, he'd bolted. He just completely ran away. And I'm left there going, what the fuck was that? We were all like, what the fuck was that? Had no clue what the hell was going on. And the police are like, what's happening? And so I take the phone and I'm like, I just sat on a man who said he was having a seizure. I think he's on meth. And the police were like, oh, we are aware of the situation. So I was like, oh, okay. They're aware of a crazy meth head near the Queen Street Bridge. Hang up the phone. The 4 of us regroup. We're like, what the fuck? There were people walking past, right? Because it was relatively busy. Now, because I was outside of a shipping container with, art installation and all these times, I realized people were like, oh, a street artist. They're doing a performance. And it was like, no, I was just being assaulted. And then at the end, everyone was like, do we clap? What's supposed to... Wow, Melbourne is very cultural. That was a weird performance. Don't quite understand the meaning behind it. We have a debrief, and I said, please drive me home. And Ben was like, absolutely. So we're walking back to where he had parked the car, and 200 metres, we get 200 metres away, and I look over and you can see some commotion, and there he is, lying on the ground, convulsing, while there was about 3, they would have been young guys, 18 or 19, and one of them was bent over holding his hands down. He hadn't sat on him yet. He was holding his hands down, and the other boys were like concerned, didn't know what was happening. Ben ran up and was like, absolutely not. This guy's a pervert. This guy's fucking weird. And then he realised, and then the fake seizure guy runs away. And I called the police back, and I was like, hey, he's still here. And they said they would send someone. I wasn't willing to wait around for them. And that was it. We went home. Ben was smart enough, because I live my life online and social media, he knew that in the midst of all this, not to take videos because that could be quite disrespectful, but he was just like, I just need to take a photo. And he snapped a cheeky photo. This is the photo that he snapped of me in my winter coat sitting on fake seizure guy. And I'm really glad he did, because this story is fucking insane. And I don't think people would believe me if I didn't have this photo evidence. I post a photo to Facebook, I think the next day, and I do this whole rant about, so embarrassing, this whole rant about how meth is a real problem in society. And I mean, it is. There's an ice epidemic. Well, there was in 2019 in Melbourne, and I write how, what the fuck is wrong with people? They're taking drugs and then asking people to sit on them. And I quickly realised that I was wrong, because the comments were flooded with people saying, oh no, this is the fake seizure guy. He is well known on the streets of Melbourne. He does this to men. No, he's not on drugs, Christian. Someone was like, he did this to me. He did this on my train line. One guy was like, he did this to some schoolboys on the train. I was like, sorry? At that point in 2019, he'd been known to do this for a couple of years, it sounded like. I want you to read the article that Dave Farrier has put together, because he's basically compiled a lot of information that's really scarce. No media or organisations have looked into this. No one's reported anything And Dave ended up speaking and getting statements from the Victoria Police. And the statements, they're interesting. David also realised that there's a Melbourne subreddit, and when you comment anything about fake seizure guy in the Melbourne subreddit, it gets deleted, which is crazy to me. So they started their own fake seizure guy subreddit, and I check it fairly regularly now. There's fucking video. There's video footage of this guy doing it, and it's really awful. He did it to someone's father who was working in their sort of shop, in their shed, outside on the footpath, and the indoor security camera was able to capture him doing it. I want to play for you some snippets because my experience probably lasted 3 minutes. This one lasts 12 minutes, and it's the guy in it, right? He was just confused. And that's the whole thing. You're just so confused as to what's happening. And then by the time it's done, I had no idea that it was a sexual assault, or it was an assault in general, and I wasn't traumatized from it. And I think that's why it doesn't bother me at all that this happened to me. That it's fine, because in the moment it didn't feel like anything. This is what's so interesting, is I reckon there's so many people in Melbourne that have tried to help this man, and they genuinely thought they're helping someone, and then they don't even think about it. They're not on Reddit. They don't know that this guy's fucking insane. So the guy's dad is working on his car. And in a moment, you see fake seizure guy walk into frame, and it's the most fake fall I've ever seen in my life. And he just falls on the ground and starts convulsing. So there he is. That's him, right? Falls to the ground. Oh, this is really uncomfortable to watch. So he just feeds you these instructions. So he goes from holding him down to then lying on... I don't like watching this. Okay. I think you understand the point. Basically, it goes on for 12 minutes, and it's just that. It's just frustrating as well. What I find so interesting about it is, what can, Vic Police actually do? I sat on a man. Hello, Victoria Police. You sat on a man. Sure did. Okay, well, I will... Yep. Cool. Like, what are they going to do? Police always say you need to report incidents like this, which I didn't know at the time, but they just write it down, and they collect a dossier of information. And at some point something will happen, and they might be able to press charges. And then when it goes to the court, they've got this series of information. So that's why it's always good to report things, even if you think they're insignificant. David is working on a podcast. He's got a podcast series called Flightless Bird, and one of those episodes he said is going to be about the fake seizure guy. Now he's done some digging, and I'm actually really excited to find out what he works out, and what, like, he's basically bringing everyone together and trying to work out, 1, why this guy does this. 2, is it a mental thing? 3, if we spread the word enough, people of Melbourne can see this guy and not do anything, and just let him be. And 4, why no media outlets? Because he's so well known. I just couldn't believe how many comments I got when I posted about it. And then now it's 2024, and I mean, this footage that we just watched was from earlier this year, January. It's 5 years later. David also, in his article, says that he thinks this has been going on unproven since 2012. He's seen people say, I saw this guy do this in 2012. That's 12 years ago. Crazy, right? I read a lot of very passionate comments from parents who are genuinely just furious that this guy is faking a seizure, because, as they've said, they have children who suffer from seizures, and their biggest fear is people, 1, not believing them, or just not helping them. And what this guy doing is a complete disservice to that. I would do the same thing again if I thought someone was having a seizure. I mean, I now know how to help someone and what not to do. And I mean, I'm on a website which talks about epilepsy and the tonic-clonic seizures. And it basically, the first thing in bold is, do not try to hold someone down when they're having a seizure. And then again, they say, do not, and I mean never, try putting anything in the mouth of someone having a seizure. What do? Move objects and furniture away from the person who's having a seizure so they don't injure themselves. Do time the seizure and call for emergency help if the seizure lasts for more than 5 minutes. If they are repeated seizures, or if the person is injured or has difficulty breathing, Also call for emergency help. Do make the individual comfortable when the seizure stops. Do consider turning the person on their side after the seizure during the period of recovery. And do expect to find that the person who has had the seizure will be confused and tired afterwards. So I want to make that expressly clear. You don't hold anyone down. And what I find interesting is, again, reading David's article, is the fake seizure guy doesn't fake seizures anymore because it's clear. He's like, oh, I'm having a seizure. Like, he said to me specifically that he was having a seizure, and he's obviously been met with pushback. Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to lay you on your side. And he's like, no, I need you to sit on me. And people are like, I'm not doing that. If you're having a seizure, that's not what you do. So he's changed it. He doesn't say he's having a seizure anymore. He says he's having muscle spasms. And one guy was like, oh, so it's not a seizure, it's muscle spasms. Okay, that's different. Okay, I will hold you down. And so over the years, he's just worked out how to do this as an art form. And I do genuinely worry that at one point, someone's going to do something bad. And not only will he ruin his own life, he'll ruin theirs. But anyways, obsessed with David Farrier and the fact that he's really looking into this. And I'm really excited to hear his podcast. I think I might be on it. Oh, stop it. So starstruck. As I was recounting my sexual assault experience to a very famous man. I mean, I deal with things through humour. My biggest worry is I don't want to make light of the situation. But to me, I'm not the only one, thankfully, so I can say what a fucking idiot I am. No, I like to think that I'm caring and kind and wanted to help my fellow human being. So did all these other people, right? And then hindsight, you look at it and you go, fucking of course. The first red flag was that he wanted me to put him on his face. And then it was just one red flag after another. And so I feel like a fucking idiot. If you know anyone that lives in Melbourne, just share the word. Just let them know that there is a man running around having fake seizures. Just be careful. I always think if you think someone's in trouble, you help them. I mean, his face exists. It's on the Reddit threads. I'll link the Reddit threads below if you want to go and have a deep dive and have a look at all the photos. It's all there. And David's article, it's a fascinating read. But I think the more people know about this, the less it'll happen. But I want to stress this enough. I don't want you to not help someone that is in need. But don't sit on them. That's literally rule number one. Don't sit on person. I wish I knew that in 2019.